You know those moments that split your life into before and after? For Chairman Kong Min-jae, it happens on an ordinary Tuesday when a little girl in worn-out sneakers walks up to his table and says 6 words that shouldn't be possible. My father had that same tattoo. What happens next isn't about the mafia, or money, or power. It's about what we owe the dead, and what we do when the past shows up wearing a pink jacket and asking for help. 7 men on the center table tonight. All Korean. All in suits cut precise as surgical blades. All carrying the weight of decisions other men never have to make. At the head sits Chairman Kong Min-jae, 53 years old, silver threading through black hair, posture that belongs to someone who stopped needing to prove anything 2 decades ago. His right forearm rests on the table as he lifts a porcelain cup. Custom imported, black Ethiopian blend, untouched by cream or sugar or fear. Ink wraps his forearm like a promise carved in skin. A black geometric dragon, coiled once around itself, body angular and severe. Its eye is marked by a single broken line, a deliberate flaw in perfect symmetry. Across from him, executives speak in measured tones about shipping routes and real estate acquisitions. About men who need reminding and debts coming due. Their words are coded, careful, the language of power dressed in business casual. Then the door opens. The bell chimes, bright and inappropriate, like laughter at a funeral. A little black girl steps inside. She can't be more than 9. Pink jacket zipped halfway up, frayed at the cuffs. Hair pulled back in a puff that's lost its morning shape. White sneakers 2 sizes too big, the kind you buy hoping a child will grow into them before they fall apart. The conversation doesn't stop immediately. Not until she walks straight toward their table. One of the men turns, irritation already forming on his face, then freezes. The others follow. Words die mid-sentence. Kang's cup pauses halfway to his lips, suspended in the sudden stillness. She doesn't ask permission, just climbs onto the empty booth bench opposite him, knees tucked beneath her, small hands flat on the leather. 7 pairs of eyes lock onto her, but she doesn't flinch. She looks at his forearm. Really looks. Studies the dragon, the broken eye, the precise geometry of ink and meaning. Then she raises one finger and points. My father had that same tattoo. The room dies. Not the tense silence before violence. Not the careful quiet of men weighing options. Vacuum silence. The kind where sound itself stops existing. Kong Min-jae sets his cup down with deliberate slowness. Porcelain clicks against the saucer. A gunshot in the void. That's not possible. One of the men mutters in Korean, voice tight. Kong doesn't speak. His eyes stay fixed on the girl. Not with threat, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition clawing its way up from a grave he thought sealed. The other men shift. Hands move to phones, to pockets, to defensive positions disguised as casual gestures. What's your name? Kong asks. His voice is controlled, each word placed with precision. Her voice comes back clear. Steady. Too steady for a child who just walked into the lion's den and climbed into its mouth. Amara. And your father? She swallows once. The only sign that fear exists somewhere beneath that armor. Everyone called him Jason. But my mom said you called him Broken Wing. The name detonates. Tank, the enforcer to Kang's right, built like a vault door, jerks back as if struck. His water glass tips, ice scattering across polished wood. Another man stands so fast his chair scrapes floor. A third whispers something that sounds like prayer or curse, the two indistinguishable. Broken Wing. The only man who ever wore the dragon tattoo with a broken eye. A mark given not for power, but for sacrifice. For the man who gives up everything so others can live. Kong stands. He's tall, broad-shouldered, his 3-piece suit immaculate. When he steps out of the booth and kneels in front of Amara, the movement feels impossible, like gravity itself bent to accommodate it. The other men freeze. A few look away, as if witnessing something too private. Where is your father? Kong asks, voice dropping to something almost gentle. Amara's eyes don't waver, don't fill with tears, Just hold steady and deliver the truth. He died. The word lands soft. Final. 2 years ago, she adds. Heart failure. My mom says stress finished what the bullets couldn't. Kong closes his eyes. Just once. A blink that lasts a lifetime. Broken Wing had been his shadow 20 years ago. His driver, his shield. The man who took a blade meant for Kong during a betrayal at Busan docks. The man who disappeared the same year Kong took full control of everything. You weren't supposed to know about us, Kong says. My dad didn't want me to. Amara's voice stays level. But when things got bad, he showed me a photograph. She reaches into her pink jacket and pulls out a folded picture, creased, worn thin from being touched too many times. 3 men in suits standing in front of a black sedan at night. City lights reflecting off dark water behind them. One of them is younger, sharper, hungry in a way only young men chasing power understand. Kong Min-jae. Amara flips the photo. On the back, in neat handwriting that Kong recognizes like his own voice, for words. If I fail, find him. Kang's breath catches. His hand trembles. The first crack in 20 years of perfect control. You came alone? He asks. She shakes her head. My mom's outside in the car. She's sick. Cancer treatments aren't working anymore. And the men who own our building say we have 3 days before eviction. Around the table, men are already moving. Phones appear. Messages sent in code. Wheels turning before orders are even given. Kong places his hand over the dragon tattoo. Fingers tracing the broken eye. This mark, he says slowly, each word weighted with history, means a man gave up everything so someone else could live. It means sacrifice for a future you'll never see. Amara nods. That sounds like my dad. Kong stands and removes his suit jacket. It's worth more than most people make in a month. He drapes it around her shoulders before she can protest, the silk lining still warm. Bring your mother inside, he says. You're not leaving here alone. Not tonight. Not ever. And somewhere in the space between that command and the men scattering to obey it, the past stops being buried and starts becoming present. Because some debts can't be paid in money. Some tattoos mean more than ink. And some little girls walk into rooms full of dangerous men and say the one sentence that changes everything. My father had that same tattoo. Hello, my friends and loved ones. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful story. As we continue this story, kindly take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and I love to always hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it at your end right now? Thank you for subscribing. But to understand why those 6 words mattered, why they hit like bullets Kong thought he'd already taken, you have to go back 20 years, to the Busan docks, where a young enforcer made a choice that would echo forward into a restaurant where a child stood asking for salvation. But first, the present demands its accounting. Tang's hand moves toward his jacket, instinct not threat. Kang's eyes flick to him, a micro-movement that says stand down without words. Tang's hand drops. The man to Kang's left, Director Yoon, leans forward. His voice comes out tight, controlled. Chairman, this is quiet. One word. Absolute. Kang's attention returns to Amara, and when he speaks again, his tone shifts. Still controlled, still precise, but softer now. The voice of a surgeon making the first incision. Broken Wing was a code name, Kong says. Not many people knew it. Your mother. What did she tell you? Amara's fingers curl tighter around the photograph. That my dad saved your life. That you made him disappear because he was in danger. That if anything happened to them, I should find you. Around the table, the men exchange glances weighted with 20 years of silence. They remember. God, they all remember. The tattoo, Kong continues, his eyes dropping to his own forearm. Did your father explain what it meant? He said the broken eye means sacrifice. That only one man could wear it at a time. That it wasn't about being powerful. It was about being willing to die for something that mattered more than yourself. Kang's jaw tightens. She knows too much. Far too much. The dragon tattoo with the broken eye isn't rank. It's not a badge of honor earned through violence or territory. It's a designation passed down through generations, given to the man who stands closest to death, who takes the blade meant for another, who carries the weight of protection until it crushes him or he passes it on. 20 years ago, that man was Jason. The memory comes unbidden. Busan docks. 3 a.m. salt air and shipping containers stacked like a steel maze. Kong was 33 then, hungry, ruthless, carving his way up through blood and strategy. The meeting was supposed to be simple. A handshake. Territory exchange. It was an execution. 6 men. Blades and guns. Kong saw the betrayal half a second too late. Jason saw it first. Tackled him sideways as the first shot cracked the air. Took a knife across the ribs meant for Kang's throat. Kept moving, kept fighting, blood streaming down his side, until the last attacker dropped. Afterward, in the safe house, while a doctor stitched muscle and tissue, Jason smiled through the pain. Looks like I earned it, Chairman. Kong had the tattoo inked onto Jason's forearm 3 days later. The broken eye dragon. The mark of the man who stands between death and the man who must survive. Kong blinks the memory away. His voice comes out rougher now, scraped raw. Your father was supposed to disappear completely. No contact. No trace. That was the agreement. He kept it, Amara says. He never told me about you until the end. When my mom got sick and he knew he was dying too, he said if everything fell apart, you'd remember what he did. That you'd honor the mark. The words land like stones in still water. Honor the mark. The code they lived by. The promise that transcends death. Kong stands slowly, and the movement feels seismic. When he steps around the table and actually kneels, in front of this 9-year-old girl in her 2 big sneakers, the shock ripples through the room like a physical force. Director Yoon inhales sharply. Tank's eyes go wide. No one moves. Kong Min-jae does not kneel. Not for politicians. Not for rivals. Not for gods. But he kneels now. Your father, Kong says, voice low and deliberate, died keeping you safe from this world. You should never have needed to find me. Amara's chin trembles, but her voice stays steady. But I did need to. And my dad said you always keep your promises. Kong closes his eyes. Just once. When he opens them again, something has shifted. The predator recedes. What remains is older, heavier. A man carrying ghosts he thought buried. Yes, he says. Ido. He stands, removes his jacket, drapes it over her small shoulders. Bring your mother inside. You're under my protection now. Both of you. And as the men scatter to obey, as phones light up and orders flow, one truth settles over the room like ash. The past isn't dead. It's sitting in a booth wearing a pink jacket. And it just called in a debt 20 years overdue. The photograph stays in Amara's hand like evidence at a trial. Kong stares at it. At the 3 men frozen in time, standing before a black sedan with the Busan skyline bleeding light behind them. He recognizes the night. September 2005. The week before everything changed. Turn it over, he says quietly. Amara flips the photo. For words in Jason's handwriting, neat, deliberate, the penmanship of a man who knew exactly what he was writing and why. If I fail, find him. No name. No explanation. Just a command issued from beyond the grave. Kang's breath leaves him slowly, like air escaping a wound. He wrote that the night before he left. Amara says, my mom found it in a box after he died, with this photo and an address. This address. Kang's voice is flat. Yes. Tank shifts his weight, leather creaking. Chairman, he planned this. All of it. Kong knows. God, he knows. Jae-sun had always been 3 moves ahead. Strategic. Careful. The kind of man who packed a tourniquet before entering a negotiation and kept exit routes memorized like prayers. Of course he planned for this. Of course he knew that disappearing wasn't the same as being safe. That the world he left behind would keep turning, keep grinding, keep devouring anyone caught in its teeth. Including a daughter, He'd never wanted to drag into this darkness. But he did it anyway. Why now? Kong asks, though he suspects he already knows. Amara's voice stays steady, but something fragile moves beneath it. My mom got sick 2 years ago. Breast cancer. We used up the savings. Then my dad's life insurance. Then everything else. She swallows. The treatment stopped working 6 months ago. Hospice said maybe 3 months. And the landlord. Her voice cracks just slightly. He said we have 3 days. After that, we're on the street. The words settle like ash. Around the table, the men don't move. Don't breathe. This isn't their world of negotiations and calculated violence. This is something rawer. More human. This is a little girl watching her mother die while the ground disappears beneath her feet. Kang's hands curl into fists at his sides. Is this mercy? Or debt? Does it matter? Jae-sun took a blade meant for him. Spent 20 years in exile, so Kong could build an empire. Died quietly, without asking for anything, without calling in the favor that could have saved him. Until now. Until his daughter stood in a restaurant holding a photograph and a promise written for after death. Kong doesn't debate. Doesn't calculate. Doesn't weigh options or consider alternatives. He simply decides. Director Yoon. Kong says, voice shifting back to command. Call Dr. Huang. I want Amara's mother in the private wing at Seoul National tonight. Full workup. Experimental treatments if necessary. Cost is irrelevant. Yoon nods, phone already out. Tank housing. The high-rise on Gangnam. Top floor. Furnished. Security detail rotation starts immediately. Yes, Chairman. And someone call ahead to the car. Tell them to bring blankets. It's cold. The men move like a machine oiled by years of precision. Kong turns back to Amara. Removes his suit jacket, Brioni custom-tailored. Worth more than 3 months of someone's rent. And drapes it over her narrow shoulders. It swallows her. The sleeves hang past her hands. The hem drops to her knees. She looks up at him, eyes wide, disbelieving. My mom, she won't accept charity. She'll say we can't afford to owe. You don't owe me anything, Kong interrupts. Voice soft but absolute. I owe your father everything. This isn't charity, Amara. This is a debt 20 years overdue. He kneels again, I level with her. Your father saved my life. Let me save yours. Amara's lip trembles. For the first time, tears break through, silent, streaming down her cheeks. She nods. Outside, engines rumble to life. Black sedans pull up to the restaurant entrance, doors opening in synchronized precision. Men in dark suits materialize from shadows, efficient and silent. Kong stands, offers his hand. Amara takes it. And as they walk out into the cool evening air, as the convoy forms around them like a fortress made of steel and leather and loyalty, one truth crystallizes. Jae-sun didn't fail. He won. Because the man he saved is keeping the promise written for after death. And some debts are honored not in blood, but in the children who survive. The private wing of Seoul National University Hospital doesn't feel like a hospital at all. No fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. No antiseptic smell burning the air. Just soft lamps, cream-colored walls, and windows overlooking the Han River at night. Water reflecting city lights like scattered stars. Amara's mother, Grace, sits in the adjustable bed looking smaller than a woman should. Thin arms. Hollowed cheeks. Eyes that carry the particular exhaustion of someone who's been fighting too long with weapons that stopped working months ago. But when Kong enters, those eyes sharpen. No, she says immediately. Firmly. We're not taking this. Kong stops 3 feet from the bed. Respectful distance. His hands are empty, no threat, no pressure. Your daughter already accepted. My daughter is 9 years old. She doesn't understand what owing people like you means. The words cut clean. Kong doesn't flinch. You're right, he says quietly. She doesn't. But I do. Grace's jaw tightens. Jae-sun told me about you. About what you do. About the cost of your help. Then he also told you about the debt I carry. Silence. Grace's hands twist the bedsheet. When she speaks again, her voice cracks. He died saving me. Let me save you. She closes her eyes. Tears slip down her cheeks. He said you'd say that. Kong comes every evening. Not during the day when business demands his attention. Not with fanfare or entourage. Just after sunset, when the hospital quiets and visiting hours technically end. But doors open for men like him anyway. Sometimes he brings fruit. Imported mangoes. Korean pears in wooden boxes. Sometimes books. Children's novels with worn covers from second-hand shops. The kind that feel loved before you open them. Once, a small wooden dragon carved by hand, its eye marked with a single groove. Amara keeps it on the nightstand beside her mother's bed. She asks questions. The kind children ask when they feel safe enough to be curious. Were you bad? Kong sits in the chair by the window, city lights painting half his face in shadow. He thinks before answering. I was dangerous, he says carefully. Your father made sure I learned when to stop. Did you hurt people? Yes. No sugar ko ating. No lies. Just truth delivered gently. Do you still? Sometimes. When they hurt others first. Amara considers this, fingers tracing the wooden dragon's spine. My dad said good and bad aren't simple. That sometimes good people do bad things for good reasons. And bad people do good things for bad reasons. King's throat tightens. That sounds like something he'd say. One night, 3 weeks into treatment, when Grace is sleeping and Amara can't, she asks the question that matters. Why did my dad really leave? Kong looks at her for a long moment, weighing truth against protection, deciding that she's earned honesty. Your father discovered something, he says slowly. A route we were using for cargo shipments. Containers through Busan port. Legitimate cover for illegitimate business. Drugs. Worse. Amara waits. Children, Kong says the word heavy as stone. Trafficked. Sold. Disappeared. Her eyes go wide. Your father found the documentation. Manifests. Payments. Names. He brought it to me secretly, knowing that if the wrong people found out, we'd both die. What did you do? I shut it down. Burned it to the ground. Arrested 17 men. Sent evidence to prosecutors who couldn't be bought. Then why did he have to leave? Kang's hands curl into fists. Because I wasn't fast enough. The men running the operation found out who exposed them before I could eliminate the threat. They put a price on his head. Contract killers. International reach. He meets Amara's eyes. I gave him 2 choices. Die fighting or disappear completely. New identity. New country. New life. He chose you before you even existed. Chose the possibility of a future over the certainty of revenge. Amara's voice comes out small. He saved those kids. Yes. Dozens. Maybe hundreds over the years. But nobody knows. No, Kong says. Just me. And now you. Silence stretches between them. Not empty, but full. Heavy with understanding. My dad used to say some wars are fought with guns, Amara whispers. And some are fought by just refusing to let bad things happen. Even when it costs you everything. Kong nods slowly. He chose a quieter war. And he won it. Amara looks at the wooden dragon, at its broken eye. He won, she repeats, like testing the weight of the words. Like believing them for the first time. Kong stands, places a hand briefly on her shoulder. Yes, he says. He did. And in the quiet of that hospital room, with the city breathing below and a sick woman sleeping nearby, the ghost of Jae-sun finally rests. Because his sacrifice wasn't forgotten. It was honored. The landlord's name is Kim Dae-young, 47 years old. Owns 19 buildings across Seoul through shell companies and family proxies. Specializes in low-income housing, the kind where maintenance requests disappear and rent increases arrive like clockwork. The kind of man who preys on people too exhausted to fight back. Tank drops the file on Kang's desk 3 days after Amara and her mother arrive at the hospital. He's been squeezing them for 8 months, Tank says, flipping pages. Raised rent twice. Ignored repairs. Threatened eviction 4 times before following through. There's a pattern, targets single mothers, immigrants, anyone without resources to push back. Kang studies the documents. Bank statements. Property records. A web of exploitation dressed in legal paperwork. He works with others, Tank continues. A syndicate. 6 property owners. They coordinate. When one evicts, the others refuse to rent. Keeps people trapped. Desperate. Names. Tank lists them. Kang memorizes each one. Recommendation. Kang asks. Tank's jaw tightens. In the old days? Busan docks. Midnight. Message sent. Kang shakes his head. Those days are gone. Then what? Kang closes the file. We use what they fear more than violence. Which is exposure. Consequences. The law they hide behind turned against them. It starts quietly. A phone call to a tax attorney on retainer. Questions about property acquisition, LLC structures, rent reporting discrepancies. Nothing threatening. Just curiosity. Then an anonymous tip to the National Tax Service. Documentation of unreported income, falsified maintenance expenses, tax evasion spanning 6 years. Audits begin within a week. Simultaneously, building inspections. The kind that can't be bribed away because they're requested by tenant advocacy groups. Groups that suddenly have funding, legal representation, media contacts. Violations surface. Fire code failures. Electrical hazards. Black mold in 17 units. Structural issues ignored for years. Repair orders arrive. Finis accumulat. Legal exposure multiplies. Kim Dae-young's phone rings at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. No name displays. He answers anyway. Mr. Kim, says a voice he doesn't recognize. Calm. Professional. Terrifying in its neutrality. You have 24 hours to reverse the eviction for Grace Cole and her daughter. You'll also forgive all back rent and issue a formal apology. Who the hell? After that, you'll sell the building. We have a buyer ready. Market value. No negocjation. You can't force me to. We're not forcing anything. But the tax audit expanding to your other properties? The tenant lawsuit being filed tomorrow? The media investigation into your syndicate's practices? Those things happen whether you cooperate or not. Silence. However, the voice continues. Cooperation makes them stop. You walk away intact. Reputation bruised but salvageable. Assets reduced but not destroyed. And if I refuse? Then we keep digging. And men like you always have deeper graves than you realize. The line goes dead. Kim Dae-young stares at his phone, hands shaking. He calls his lawyer at 2:15. By morning, the eviction notice is rescinded. Grace receives a letter 1 week later. Official letterhead. Legal language. A formal apology for administrative errors and notification that all outstanding rent is forgiven. Furthermore, building ownership has transferred to a community housing trust. Rent will be reduced by 30%. And a renovation fund has been established. She reads it twice, disbelieving. I don't understand, she whispers to Kang during his evening visit. Why would they? Sometimes people realize their mistakes, Kang says evenly, and correct them. Grace's eyes search his face. She knows. Of course she knows. But she doesn't ask. Some gifts are accepted in silence. Late that night, after Grace has fallen asleep and the nurses have dimmed the lights, Kang stands by Amara's makeshift bed. A reclining chair with blankets piled high. She sleeps curled on her side, the wooden dragon clutched in one hand. Kang's jacket draped over her like armor. Tank appears in the doorway. The others. Audits. Lawsuits. Public exposure. Let the system do what it's designed to do. They'll survive. Probably, Kong says. But they'll think twice before doing it again. Tank nods. Different than the old ways. Yes. Better. Kong watches Amara breathe. Steady, peaceful, safe. Your father taught me that, he says quietly, though Amara can't hear him. That some wars aren't won with violence. That power means nothing if you only know how to destroy. He adjusts the jacket around her shoulders. He chose restraint when it mattered most. So will I. Tank retreats silently. Kong stays a moment longer, watching a child sleep in safety earned not through fear, but through the kind of justice that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that leaves no blood, only consequences. And a little girl dreaming without nightmares for the first time in months. For months pass like pages turning. Grace's treatments work. Not miraculously. Medicine doesn't trade in miracles, but steadily. Color returns to her cheeks. Weight returns to her frame. The doctors use words like remission and encouraging with cautious optimism. Amara starts school. Private academy in Gangnam. Uniform pressed, backpack new, lunch prepared by someone paid to care about nutrition. She makes friends. Laughs in hallways. Brings home drawings that get pinned to the refrigerator in their apartment. The one with floor-to-ceiling windows and security that never sleeps. And Kong keeps visiting. Not every day now, but regularly. Consistently. The way someone does when obligation becomes something else. When April arrives, so does Amara's 10th birthday. The party is small. Intimate. Just Grace, Amara, Tank, Director Yoon, and a few carefully vetted children from school. Cake from the French bakery on Cheongdam-dong. Decorations in pink and gold. Presents wrapped in paper that costs more than the gifts inside. Kong arrives last, carrying a single small box. Amara sees him and runs over, pink dress swirling, smile bright enough to hurt. You came. I promised, didn't I? She hugs him. Quick. Impulsive. The way children do before self-consciousness teaches them restraint. Kong freezes for half a second, then carefully returns it. Grace watches from across the room, eyes wet. After cake, after presents, after the other children leave with their parents, Kong asks Amara to sit. They settle on the couch by the window. City lights beginning to glow as dusk settles. He hands her the box. It's small. Black velvet. Simple clasp. Amara opens it slowly. Inside, a leather bracelet. Dark brown, hand-stitched, sized for a child's wrist. She lifts it carefully. Turns it over. Engraved on the inside, barely visible. A single symbol. An eye with a broken line through it. It's like your tattoo, she whispers. Yes. What does it mean? Kang's voice comes quiet. Deliberate. Carrying weight he wants her to understand. This isn't a mark of power, Amara. It's not about control or fear or how many people obey you. He helps her fasten it around her wrist. It's a promise. To protect what matters more than yourself. To choose sacrifice over comfort. To stand between danger and the people who can't defend themselves. Amara looks up at him. Eyes serious beyond her years. Like my dad did. Yes. Exactly like your father. She touches the symbol gently, tracing its shape. Can I keep this promise? Even though I'm just a kid. Kang's throat tightens. You already are. You walked into a room full of dangerous men because your mother needed help. That took more courage than most adults will ever have. But I was scared. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Kong says. It's acting despite it. Your father taught me that too. Amara hugs him again. Longer this time. Thank you, she whispers into his shoulder. When she pulls back and runs to show her mother, Kong stays seated, looking at his own forearm. The dragon tattoo. The broken eye. The mark he's carried for 20 years. 3 days later, he returns to the tattoo artist who did the original work. An old man now. Shaking hands steadied by decades of practice. I need an addition, Kong says, rolling up his sleeve. The artist studies the dragon. What kind? Another line. beneath a broken eye. Why? Kong is quiet for a long moment. Because one mark was for the man who saved me. This one is for the daughter who reminded me what that salvation was for. The needle hums to life. The addition takes 40 minutes. A second broken line, parallel to the first, precise and permanent. When it's finished, Kong stares at it. 2 broken lines now. One for Jason. One for Amara. Reminders that power is temporary. Cities crumble, empires fall. Feared men become forgotten. But legacy? Legacy lives in the children who carry forward the promises carved into skin and soul. Legacy is permanent. That evening, walking through Gangnam district back to his car, something shifts. People still move out of his way. Still recognize the danger that clings to him like cologne. But a street vendor nods respectfully instead of looking away in fear. A young mother with a stroller meets his eyes and smiles, brief, genuine, before continuing past. An old man on a bench tips his head in acknowledgement. Kong realizes, with something close to shock, that he is no longer just feared. He is respected. Not for the violence he can unleash, but for the child he protects. For the promise he keeps. For the man he's becoming in the shadow of a ghost who chose a quieter war. And somewhere, in memory, in spirit, in whatever space the dead occupy, Jason sees. And smiles. 5 years pass like a promise kept in installments. Grace returns to work. Not immediately. Recovery takes time, rebuilding takes longer. But eventually, she finds a position at a nonprofit supporting immigrant families. The irony isn't lost on her. She once needed the help she now provides. She thrives. Not just survives, but actually thrives. Her apartment fills with plants. Photos on walls. Laughter that sounds like it belongs there. The kind of home built from safety, not just shelter. Amara grows. Not just taller, though she does, shooting up until she has to look down slightly to hug her mother, but sharper. Observant in ways that remind Kong uncomfortably of Jae-sun. She notices things. Patterns. Inconsistencies. The way people move around Kong. The deference that isn't quite fear but isn't quite respect either. Why do people look at you like that? She asks one evening when she's 13, sitting across from him at a cafe near her school. Like what? Like you're a storm they're trying to predict. Kong sets down his coffee. Considers lying. Decides against it. Because I am. She nods slowly, processing. My dad was too, wasn't he? In a different way. Your father was the one who convinced storms to change direction. And you. I'm learning. Her education is handled quietly. Tuition payments arrive from a scholarship fund that doesn't quite exist. Administrative errors that always work in her favor. Teachers who seem invested in her success without knowing why. Grace suspects. Of course she suspects. But when she tries to thank Kong, he deflects. The scholarship committee handles all that. I'm just an emergency contact. Emergency contacts don't visit on birthdays. Maybe I'm a thorough emergency contact. She smiles despite herself. Stops asking questions. Accepts the gift the way Kong once asked her to. With grace, not guilt. Amara excels. Top of her class. Science competitions. Debate team captain. The kind of student teachers remember years later as evidence that their job matters. But she's not sheltered. Kong makes sure of that. At 14, he takes her to the office. Not the restaurant where they first met, but his actual office, 23rd floor, glass and steel, soul spreading below like a kingdom made of light. What do you do here? She asks, looking around at the minimalist furniture, the art that costs more than cars. I manage interests, investments, property, logistics. Legal logistics? He meets her eyes. Mostly. And the rest? The rest requires understanding that the world isn't divided neatly into good and bad. That sometimes protecting people means existing in the spaces between. She sits in his chair, expensive leather, designed for men twice her size. Spins once. My dad existed in those spaces too. Yes. He chose me over that world. He did. Do you regret that he left? Kong is quiet for a long moment. Then, I regret that he had to choose. But I'm grateful he chose correctly. Amara stops spinning. Looks at him with those eyes that are too old, too knowing. You miss him. Every day. Me too. At 15, she asks the question Kong has been expecting. They're walking through a park near her high school. Autumn leaves falling. Her college entrance exams approaching. Why do you do this? Really? Do what? Take care of us. You've paid for everything. Doctors. Housing. School. Mom's job. I know you make calls. Why? Because your father. No. She stops walking. Turns to face him. That's what you tell yourself. But it's been 5 years. Debt doesn't last this long. So why? Kong stops too. Looks at this girl who used to wear shoes too big and now stands almost as tall as her mother. Sharp and certain and demanding truth. Because, he says carefully, somewhere along the way, obligation became something else. What? He struggles for the word. Finds it finally. Family. Amara's expression softens. Yeah, it did. They walk in silence for a while. Comfortable. Easy. Then casually, like the word doesn't reshape everything. Uncle Kong, do you think I should apply to Seoul National or? She stops mid-sentence. Eyes wide. I didn't mean. Kang's chest tightens. Warmth spreading through places that have been cold for decades. Uncle, he repeats quietly, testing the shape of it. So it just slipped. No. His voice comes out rougher than intended. He clears his throat. No, it's good. Amara smiles. Uncertain. Hopeful. Yeah. Kong nods. Yeah. And as they continue walking, discussing universities and futures and possibilities that wouldn't exist without 5 years of promises kept, Kong realizes something. He spent decades taking territory, power, control. But these 5 years? These he built. And they matter more than everything he took combined. Uncle Kong echoes in his mind the rest of the evening. He doesn't try to stop it. He accepts it. The way you accept gifts you didn't know you needed. Until they arrive and you can't imagine living without them. The auditorium holds 3,000 people. Parents, teachers, faculty, donors whose names are etched on plaques in hallways they've never walked. Kong sits in the back row. Not the reserved section up front where benefactors sit in tailored suits accepting recognition. Just the back. One face among hundreds. Tank offered to secure better seats. Kong refused. Some moments, he said, you're supposed to witness, not own. On stage, 18-year-old Amara Park adjusts the microphone. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Seoul National University. Pre-law. Already accepted. She wears her graduation gown like armor. The leather bracelet visible on her wrist despite the formal dress code. The broken eye symbol catching light. Her mother sits in the third row, crying already. Happy tears. Proud tears. The kind that say we made it louder than words ever could. Amara begins. When I was 9 years old, I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Her voice carries. Clear. Strong. The product of debate teams and presentations and learning to command rooms that once terrified her. My father died when I was 7. He was a complicated man. He made choices most people wouldn't understand. Lived in spaces between right and wrong that don't exist on maps or moral compasses. Kang's chest tightens. But when it mattered, when he discovered something evil and had to choose between his own safety and doing what was right, he chose right, even though it cost him everything. Silence in the auditorium. 3,000 people listening. He told my mother once that some wars are fought with guns and violence, and others are fought by simply refusing to let bad things happen, by standing between danger and the people who can't protect themselves, by sacrificing your own future so someone else can have one. Amara pauses, looks down at her bracelet. He won his war. Quietly. Without recognition. Without anyone knowing except the people he saved. She looks up again, eyes scanning the crowd. Kong knows she can't see him. Too far back. Too many faces. But for a moment, he swears she's looking right at him. We spend so much time glorifying power, dominance, control. But the people who change the world aren't always the ones on magazine covers or in history books. Sometimes they're the ones who give up power, who choose restraint over revenge, who build instead of destroy. She smiles. Small. Genuine. My father taught me that. And so did the man who honored my father's sacrifice by protecting the family he left behind. Grace sobs openly now. Kang's hands grip the armrests. So to everyone graduating today, you'll have choices. Between taking and giving. Between dominance and service. Between the quick path and the right one. Amara's voice strengthens. Choose the quieter war. Choose the harder path. Choose to be remembered not for what you took, but for what you built. The applause starts small, then builds, then becomes thunderous. Kong doesn't clap. He just sits, watching, feeling something shift inside him that's been shifting for years, but only now reaches completion. 2 weeks later, Director Yoon enters Kang's office with news. The vote was unanimous. Kong looks up from paperwork, and the syndicate accepts the new directive. No trafficking of any kind, human, weapon, or otherwise. We transition to legitimate operations where possible. Where not possible, we focus on protection, small businesses, immigrant communities, people the system ignores. Pushback. Some. The old guard doesn't adapt easily. Then they retire. Generously. But they retire. Yoon nods. It'll reduce revenue by 40%. I know. Some will see it as weakness. Kong leans back. Let them. I spent 30 years being feared. I'll spend the next 30 being useful. Yoon studies him. This girl changed you. No, Kong says quietly. Her father did. She just reminded me of lessons I'd forgotten. At night, alone in his apartment overlooking Seoul, Kong removes his shirt and stands before the mirror. The dragon tattoo wraps his forearm. 2 broken lines beneath the eye now. Jason Amara. Reminders that power is temporary. That empires crumble. That fear fades. But legacy? Legacy lives in the children who walk across graduation stages and speak about sacrifice. In mothers who survive cancer and rebuild lives. In neighborhoods protected not through violence, but through quiet intervention. Legacy is permanent. He thinks about succession. About stepping back. About letting younger men run operations while he focuses on the parts that matter. The scholarship fund that's now real. The housing initiative. The protection networks that don't require bloodshed. He thinks about Amara starting university. About being the person she calls when she needs advice. About watching her become the kind of lawyer who defends people like her mother used to be. He thinks about Jae-sun. About whether ghosts can see the futures they created. And he decides, no, he knows, that dominance is a young man's game. Legacy is for men who've learned the difference between being powerful and being good. Kang Min-jae chooses legacy. Outside, Seoul glows. Inside, a man who once ruled through fear smiles at the reflection of someone different. Someone better. Someone worthy of being called uncle by a girl whose father saved his life 20 years ago. And that, he realizes, is worth more than every empire he ever built. 23 years after a 9-year-old girl in a pink jacket walked into a restaurant and changed everything, Amara Park returns. She's 32 now. Attorney at a human rights law firm. Married to a pediatric surgeon she met during a pro bono case. Living in an apartment she chose herself. Paid for with money she earned. Kang is 76. Retired officially. Still consulted occasionally. Still feared by some. Respected by more, loved by a very small, very specific few. His hair is fully silver now. His movements slower. The dragon tattoo on his forearm has faded slightly, ink settling into aged skin the way memories settle into bone. They meet at the same restaurant. The one with the black door and brass handle. The one where ghosts became real and debts became family. But this time, Amara doesn't come alone. She carries a child. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, with Amara's dark eyes and her father's easy smile. Pink jacket, a conscious choice. Kong suspects. Hair pulled back in a puff decorated with butterfly clips. Uncle Kong. Amara says, voice warm with affection earned over decades. I want you to meet someone. She sets the child down gently. This is Grace. Named after my mother. We call her Gracie. Kang's throat tightens at the name. At the continuation. At the way love echoes forward through generations like ripples in still water. He kneels slower now, joints protesting, but he manages, until he's eye level with the little girl. Hello, Gracie. She studies him with the fearless curiosity of children who've only known safety. Then her eyes catch on his forearm. The dragon. The 2 broken lines. Her small hand reaches out, fingers hovering over the faded ink. My grandfather had that tattoo. The words land like an earthquake. Kong freezes. Amara's hand goes to her mouth. Around them, the restaurant continues. Conversations, clinking glasses. The soft jazz that's played for 23 years. But inside this moment, time stops. Gracie looks up at Kong with perfect innocence. Mommy showed me pictures. He had a dragon too. Right here. She points to her own small forearm. Kang's vision blurs. For the first time in 50 years, through wars and betrayals, through violence and loss, through every carefully controlled moment of a life built on never showing weakness, tears fill his eyes. One spills over. Tracks down his weathered cheek. Yes, he manages, voice breaking. Yes, he did. Amara kneels beside them, arm around her daughter. Tell her, she says softly to Kong. Tell her about her grandfather. The whole story. So he does. In that booth in that restaurant, with a 3-year-old girl sitting between them eating ice cream while adults speak, Kong tells the story he's carried for decades. About Jason Broken Wing. The man who saw evil and chose to stop it even when the cost was exile. Who took a blade meant for another man. Who gave up brotherhood and belonging so children he'd never meet could be safe. About the night at Busan docks. The betrayal. The knife. About the trafficking route shut down because one man refused to look away. About the decision to disappear rather than endanger everyone he loved. Your grandfather, Kong says, looking at Gracie though she's too young to understand most of it, was the bravest man I ever knew. Not because he fought, but because he knew when to walk away. Did he save people? Gracie asks, ice cream forgotten. Yes. So many people. More than we'll ever know. Mommy says you save people too. Kong glances at Amara, who smiles through her own tears. I tried, he says. Your grandfather taught me how. Gracie considers this with the seriousness children sometimes access. So the tattoo means being brave? It means sacrifice, Kong says gently. Giving up something you want so someone else can have what they need. Like sharing. Despite everything, Kong laughs. Vet. Broken. Beautiful. Yes. Exactly like sharing. Gracie nods sagely. I'm good at sharing. Amara hugs her daughter close, looking at Kong over the small head. Thank you, she mouths silently. Kong just nods. Can't speak yet. Not through the emotion lodged in his throat like decades of unspoken grief finally finding release. 5 years later, Kong Min-jae passes quietly in his sleep. No violence. No drama. Just a life that ran its course and ended peacefully. The way storms eventually settle into stillness. His funeral is attended by hundreds. Business leaders. Politicians. Former associates who've become legitimate entrepreneurs. People whose lives he touched in ways they never fully understood. But in the front row sit 3 people who matter most. Grace, recovered, thriving, hair now gray, alive against all odds. Amara, holding her mother's hand, wearing the leather bracelet with the broken eye. And little Gracie, 8 years old now, holding a framed photograph of a man she never met, but whose legacy shaped her entire existence. At the service, Amara speaks. My Uncle Kong spent his early life taking, she says, territory, power, control. He was feared, respected, dangerous. She pauses. But when a little girl walked into his restaurant and reminded him of a debt he owed, everything changed. He spent the rest of his life giving, building, protecting, not through violence, but through the quiet strength my father taught him. Her voice strengthens. Power fades. Empires crumble. Feared men become forgotten. But sacrifice? Sacrifice multiplies. It echoes forward through generations. Through children who survive. Through families who rebuild. Through legacies that outlive the men who started them. She touches the bracelet on her wrist. Some men rule cities. Others save the future without ever owning it. She looks at the casket. Uncle Kong learned to be the second kind. And because of that, my daughter knows her grandfather's story. My mother survived. And I stand here not as someone rescued, but as someone empowered to rescue others. The words settle over the mourners like benediction. Years pass. The dragon tattoo with the broken eye becomes something else. Not a symbol of syndicate power or criminal hierarchy, but a legend. Whispered in neighborhoods where people still remember. Passed down through families who were protected when they had nowhere else to turn. The mark of someone who chose sacrifice over comfort. Who stood between danger and the defenseless. Who gave up power so others could be safe. Amara eventually gets her own tattoo. Small. Tasteful. On her shoulder where her daughter will see it and ask questions. A single broken eye. Not a dragon. Not the full symbol. Just the reminder. The promise. And when Gracie turns 18 and asks about getting one herself, Amara sits her down and tells her the full story. About a great-grandfather who fought a quiet war. About an uncle who honored that sacrifice for decades. About how the best legacies aren't built through dominance, but through the choice to protect what matters more than yourself. So can I? Gracie asks. Can I get the symbol? Amara studies her daughter. Smart. Compassionate. Already volunteering at refugee centers. Already choosing the harder path. Yes, she says finally. But only if you understand what it means. Ido. Gracie's voice is certain. It means some things matter more than me. And when that's true, you sacrifice. You protect. You build instead of take. Amara smiles. Then yes, you've earned it. And somewhere, in memory, in spirit, in whatever space the dead occupy, two men watch. Jae-sun, who started everything with one impossible choice, and Kong Min-jae, who honored it long enough to see that choice multiply across generations. They don't speak. They don't need to, because the tattoo speaks for them. The broken eye, the mark of men who understood that power is temporary, but sacrifice? Sacrifice is eternal. And the future it builds outlives every empire, every throne, every feared name that eventually fades to dust. Some men rule cities. Others save the future without ever owning it. And in the end, only one kind is remembered with love instead of fear. Only one kind lives forever in the children who carry forward the promise carved into skin and soul. To protect what matters more than yourself. My father had that same tattoo. 6 words that changed everything. A legacy built not through power, but through the courage to give it up.